Hello, my name is Hillary Martin, and I'm going to be presenting on strategies for teaching content area vocabulary. For this presentation, I chose to focus on vocabulary for 9th grade social studies and ELA. At my school in the spring, all 9th graders studied the Jim Crow era and civil rights movement in social studies, while also reading To Kill a Mockingbird in English. So, an understanding of the vocabulary and concepts surrounding these topics is critical for success in both classes. To help support teachers in these units, I chose to research vocabulary journals and interactive word walls. These are both strategies that will support vocabulary learning in each class independently. When used in both classes, these strategies will also help encourage transfer of knowledge and connections between the classes, something that students often struggle with. Here you can see an example of what a vocabulary journal page for this unit might look like. The broad definition of a vocabulary journal is a place where students record vocab words, definitions, and sometimes additional information about the word. For my purposes, the vocabulary journals will include the vocab word, a student-friendly definition, an example sentence, and a visual representation of the word. There is a wealth of research supporting the use of visualization for supporting vocabulary learning. See, for example, Rahmawati's 2016 article, The Influence of Vocabulary Journals in Teaching Students Vocabulary Mastery, Chapter 5 of Ellery and Rosenboom's book, Sustaining Strategic Readers, and Herschel and Fritz's 2013 article, Learning Vocabulary. Students will carry their vocabulary journals to both English and social studies class in order to add key vocabulary as it's introduced. At first, the words will be exclusively chosen by the teacher as students grow used to the process. However, once students are comfortable with using their journals, I would recommend that teachers model how they choose words for journals and then encourage students to suggest additional keywords to add and to make a case for why they're important. This will encourage students to think critically about the content as they consider which words are important enough to make the cut into their vocab journals. In their 2009 article, The Effect of Keeping Vocabulary Notebooks on Vocabulary Acquisition, Walters and Boskert found that students who used vocab notebooks showed an increase in their independent use of the vocabulary in both their class discussions and their written work, which indicates that vocab journals are an effective tool for supporting student understanding of vocabulary. This finding was further supported by Diaz in 2015 and Rahmawati in 2016, as both found that students learning English as a foreign language demonstrated greater ownership over vocabulary after using a vocabulary journal. This may be due to the fact that keeping a vocab journal requires students to work with words repeatedly in multiple ways, something that has been frequently found to improve student vocabulary acquisition. Finally, keeping a vocab journal gives students a personal reference that they can return to throughout the course of the unit whenever they need to revisit a vocab word. Despite their many advantages, vocabulary journals do have a few potential drawbacks. According to Walters and Boskert, they can be time-consuming to implement, as students need to become familiar with the process and, of course, need time in class to fill in their journals. However, this process will become less time-consuming as students become more familiar with the format. Additionally, time is already being spent on vocab instruction in both social studies and ELA. Vocab journals will likely be a more efficient use of that time, thus saving time in the long run. Walters and Boskert also found that vocabulary journals were most effective when introduced early in the year, so starting them in May will be a challenge. However, using them now will at the least help us to develop a protocol for use so that they could be introduced earlier in the year next year. Finally, it's important to note that most of the research on vocabulary journals has been centered on students learning a foreign language. Given their effectiveness in that setting, however, it is reasonable that similar results would be produced when used for acquiring vocabulary in a new content area in one's native language. There are a number of ways to provide additional scaffolding in order to differentiate vocabulary journals. Some students may need support in crafting student-friendly definitions and example sentences. To start with, these tasks can be done as a whole class, with responsibility slowly being released as students are ready. Some students may also benefit from having a graphic organizer to help them organize their pages and keep track of the required information. For English language learners, it may help to include a translation of the word into their first language, as well as a definition in their native language. For gifted and talented students, encourage research into additional information about the words, such as etymology, breaking the words into parts, and finding connected words. The second strategy I'll be talking about today is the interactive word wall. Speaking broadly, a word wall consists of key vocabulary organized and displayed. An interactive word wall differs from a traditional word wall in that, in addition to the words, it also includes student-created visuals for each word. Ideally, the words are categorized and organized in a way that demonstrates the relationships and connections between them. Similarly to the vocabulary journals, for this unit, it would be best to use word walls in both English and social studies. Words could be added to the walls throughout the unit, and I would encourage teachers to ask students at the beginning of English what new words have been added to the social studies wall and vice versa. These words could then be added to the walls in both classrooms. Teachers should encourage students to use the walls as reference tools when needed. I would also encourage teachers to work with students to categorize the words on the walls. According to Jackson, Tripp, and Cox, this will help students better understand the relationships between words and thus develop a deeper understanding of the words themselves and the context in which they appear. According to Harmon, Wood, and Kaiser, one of the biggest advantages of interactive word walls is that they harness the power of visualization to help students understand and remember vocabulary. Having not only the words but their relationships shown on the wall further uses visualization to help students make connections between words. Because the walls stay up throughout the unit, students are exposed to the words repeatedly, which, according to both Harmon et al. And Jackson et al., helps to solidify student understanding of vocabulary. Finally, according to Jackson et al., interactive word walls are a powerful tool for developing student self-sufficiency, as they provide a reference students can use independently instead of asking the teacher when they need help remembering or spelling a vocab word. The biggest drawback to using the interactive word wall is that the initial setup can be time-consuming for the teacher. They need to choose words, designate a space, and determine how the word wall space will be arranged and organized. This is a place where I can work to support the classroom teachers in getting the word wall planned and set up. This will also be less time-consuming on subsequent uses, as teachers can use the same list of words and the same general setup each year. Because they provide visual support for vocabulary, word walls already help to differentiate vocabulary learning. The process can be further differentiated by providing varying levels of scaffolding as needed, and by starting with teacher-selected vocabulary and gradually adding student-selected vocab. In a class that includes English language learners, it may be beneficial to include translations in those students' first languages to provide an additional reference for them. Gifted and talented students could conduct research and provide additional information on etymology and related words to add to the wall. Both of these strategies provide ample opportunity for students to work with vocabulary in multiple ways, which Dubiner, in the 2017 article Using Vocabulary Notebooks for Vocabulary Acquisition and Teaching, found to be crucial for helping students develop a deep understanding of vocabulary. As you can see here, there is also a wide body of research indicating that both vocabulary journals and interactive word walls help students take ownership over their learning by creating their own vocabulary references, instead of relying solely on the teacher. Finally, these strategies can both be implemented in tandem during social studies and ELA, allowing for and encouraging transfer of skills and knowledge between classes, which is something that is often difficult for students. And here you can see some of my references and more of my references and a few more references. Thank you.